Hello again. It's a pleasure to meet you at last, Mrs. Crawley.
We're delighted to be here. Aren't we, Matthew?
Delighted.
Welcome to Downton. Thank you. You've been so kind.
What a reception committee.
Yes, thank you.
This is Carson. We'd all be lost without him. Mamma, may I present Matthew Crawley and Mrs. Crawley, my mother, Lady Grantham.
What should we call each other?
Well, we could always start with Mrs. Crawley and Lady Grantham.
Come into the drawing room and we can make all the proper introductions. Thank you, guys.
Do you think you'll enjoy village life? It'll be very quiet after life in the city.
Even Manchester.
I'm sure I'll find something to keep me busy.
You might like the hospital.
What sort of hospital is it? How many beds?
Well, it isn't really a hospital.
Don't let Dr. Clarkson hear you. He thinks it's second only to St. Thomas's.
It's a cottage hospital, of course, but quite well equipped.
Who pays for it?
Oh, good. Let's talk about money.
My father gave the building and an endowment to run it. In a way, he set up his own memorial.
But how splendid.
And Mr. Lloyd George's new insurance measures will help.
Please don't speak that man's name. We are about to eat.
I will hold it steady and you can help yourself, sir.
Yes, I know. Thank you.
You'll soon get used to the way things are done here.
If you mean that I'm accustomed to a very different life from this, then that is true.
What will you do with your time?
I've got a job in Ripon. I said I'll start tomorrow.
A job?
In a partnership. You might have heard of it, Harvell & Carter. They need someone who understands industrial law, I'm glad to say, although I'm afraid most of it will be wills and conveyancing.
You do know I mean to involve you in the running of the estate.
Oh, don't worry. There are plenty of hours in the day. And, of course, I'll have the weekend.
We'll discuss this later. We mustn't bore the ladies.
What is a weekend?
Why shouldn't he be a lawyer?
Gentlemen don't work silly, not real gentlemen.
Don't listen to her, Daisy.
No, listen to me. And take those kidneys up to the servery before I knock you down and serve your brains as fritters.
Yes, Mrs. Patlock. Wonder what that Mr. Mosley makes of them.
Poor old Mosley. I pity the man who's taken that job.
Then why did you apply for it?
I thought it might help me to get away from you, Mr. Bates.
I'm so interested to see the hospital.
Well, you would be, with your late husband a doctor.
Not just my husband. My father and brother, too, and I trained as a nurse during the war.
Oh, fancy.
I'd love to be involved in some way.
Well, you could always help at the Brigham By sale next month. That would be most appreciated.
I should say so. She's a match for the old lady. She wasn't going to give in.
What old lady are you referring to, Thomas? You cannot mean her ladyship, the Dowager Countess. Not if you wish to remain in this house.
No, Mr. Carson.
William? Are you aware the seam at your shoulder is coming apart?
I felt it go a bit earlier. I'll mend it when we turn in.
You will mend it now, and you will never again appear in public in a similar state of undress.
No, Mr. Carson.
To progress in your chosen career, William, you must remember that a good servant at all times retains a sense of pride and dignity that reflects the pride and dignity of the family he serves. And never make me remind you of it again.
I'll do it. And cheer up. We've all had a smack from Mr. Carson.
Yeah, you'll be the butler yourself one day. Then you'll do the smacking.
I could never be like him. I bet he comes from a line of butlers that goes back to the Conqueror.
He learned his business and sold you. Even Mr. Carson wasn't born standing to attention.
I hope not, for his mother's sake.
This was at the back door.
Thank you, William.
It's kind of you to take an interest.
I'm afraid it's a case of the war horse and the drum. You know my late husband was a doctor.
I do. I'm familiar with Dr. Crawley's work on the symptoms of infection in children.
Even I studied nursing during the South African War.
Really? Very distressing. Young farmer John Drake, tenant Lord Grantham's, came in today. It's dropsy, I'm afraid.
May I see him?
Yeah, by all means.
Is the dropsy of the liver or the heart?
Everything points to the heart. All right, Mr. Drake, you're in safe hands now.
What will happen to his wife?
She may try to keep the farm on. Grantham is not a harsh landlord, but her children are young.
What can I do to help? If I'm to live in this village, I must have an occupation. Please, let me be useful.
He chooses his clothes himself. He puts them out at night and hangs the ones he's worn. I get to take the linen down to the laundry, but that's about all.
That's all?
Well, I'll do this. He says, I'll take the other, I'll tie that. I'm just stood there like a chump, watching a man get dressed. To be honest, Mr. Bates, I don't see the point of it.
I thought you didn't like him.
Well, so what? I have plenty of friends I don't like.
Would you want Mary to marry one of them?
Why do you always have to pretend to be nicer than the rest of us?
Perhaps I am.
Then pity your wife, whose fortune must go to this odd young man who talks about weekends and jobs. If Mary were to marry him, then all would be resolved.